vampire lord knocked and said, "I was told you're alone. Let me give you sons, woman." Rain fell in silver sheets, drumming against the roof of Seleni's manor, a lonely house perched on the edge of the cursed woods. She moved quietly through the halls, her fingers tracing the carved oak of the banister, worn smooth by generations of her family. The house had always felt alive, whispering in corners, creaking in hallways, and echoing the stories of those who had lived and died within its walls. Selene had spent the last 3 years in solitude. After the death of her husband, the world outside seemed distant, almost unreal. The villagers spoke of her with a mixture of fear and pity. Some said the manor was cursed, that the family blood carried shadows in its veins. She had once feared the stories, but after her husband's passing, she had come to accept them as part of her quiet, lonely life. The wind and rain became her companions, the whispering halls her friends. Yet tonight, something felt different. The storm carried an unfamiliar weight, a presence that made her pulse quicken. Selene paused near the window, watching the black forest sway in the moonlight. The trees seemed taller, darker, their twisted branches like skeletal hands reaching for the sky. And then she heard it, a knock at the massive front door. It was slow, deliberate, almost ceremonial. Selene's breath caught. No visitor would dare come in this storm, not the villagers and certainly not anyone of importance. Her hand hovered over the door latch, unsure whether to flee or answer. Another knock echoed, stronger this time, reverberating through the house. "Who is there?" she called, her voice trembling. The silence that followed was thick, almost suffocating. Then a voice, a deep, calm voice that seemed to emerge from the shadows themselves, spoke. "I was told you are alone," the voice said. "Let me give you sons, woman." Selene's heart froze. She staggered back from the door, clutching the wood as if it could protect her. The words were strange, ancient, and terrifying, yet they carried a strange pull, a thread of something she could not name. Who are you?" she whispered. "I am Varric," the voice said, each syllable deliberate, carrying authority and centuries of power. "I am a friend, perhaps more than a friend. I can lift the shadows from your bloodline if you let me." Selene shook her head. "I do not understand. Leave, please. I do not know you." The knock came again, insistent, but this time there was a pause, and then the door creaked open as if moved by an invisible hand. Varric stepped inside. He was taller than any man she had ever seen, his presence commanding yet strangely graceful. His eyes glowed faintly in the dim candlelight, silver flecks in a sea of shadow. His hair was dark as midnight, and his movements were quiet, like a predator that chose not to strike yet. Selene wanted to scream, but the sound stuck in her throat. He did not approach threateningly. Instead, he stopped a few paces from her, letting the storm howl around them. "You fear me," he said softly, "and yet I can see the fear is mixed with curiosity. That is good." I will not," she began, but her words faltered. Varric tilted his head, studying her with a strange intensity. "You have been alone for too long," he said. "The world has cast shadows over your heart. I can offer something different. I can give you sons who carry both strength and protection, heirs who will bear your light into the darkness." Selene's mind spun. Sons, heirs. She had never imagined a future beyond the walls of her lonely manor. And yet the weight of his words, the certainty in his tone, made something deep inside her stir. It was not desire, at least not in the way mortals understand it, but a faint glimmer of hope, a possibility that the shadows could be lifted. "I cannot," she whispered, shaking her head. "I cannot let anyone into my life. I have lost. I have nothing left to give." Varric stepped closer, and the air seemed to shift with his presence. The candles flickered, casting dancing shadows across the walls. "You have given more than you know," he said. "The grief you carry is heavy, yes, but it does not belong only to you. You were chosen for something greater, something your ancestors dreamed of but could not achieve. And now the time has come." Selene took a step back, feeling the cold stone floor beneath her bare feet. She had heard stories of vampire lords, of ancient beings who walked between life and death, who could charm, coerce, or destroy with a word. And yet, Varric did not move to strike. He simply stood there, patient, commanding, waiting. "Why me?" she asked, her voice barely audible over the storm. "Because you are strong," he said. "Because your bloodline carries a curse that only love, trust, and courage can break. You cannot do this alone. And I cannot do this without you." The storm outside seemed to echo his words, the wind howling through the trees like the cries of lost souls. Seleni's heart raced. Part of her wanted to slam the door and run into the night, leave this house, leave this man, leave everything. But another part, a smaller, quieter part, wanted to listen, to understand, to see if the shadows she had carried for so long could finally be lifted. "You speak in riddles," she said. "I do not know if I can trust you." "Trust is not given," Varric said softly. "It is earned. And yet some bonds are older than time itself. Some destinies cannot be escaped. Yours is one of them." Seleni's gaze fell to the floor, and she noticed the faint shimmer in the shadows, shadows that moved even without wind, dancing as if alive. She shivered. She wanted to deny him, wanted to send him away, but the truth pressed on her heart. She had been waiting for something, though she did not know what. Something that could bring meaning back to her lonely life. She began, then stopped. Words failed her. Varric stepped closer, just enough for the warmth of his presence to brush against her. He did not touch her, but the air seemed charged between them, thick with the weight of unspoken possibilities. "You will decide soon enough," he said. "But know this, the curse that shadows your bloodline, it can be broken, only if you step forward willingly." Seleni's hands trembled as she gripped the edge of the door. Fear and curiosity warred inside her. To let him in could mean freedom or danger. To refuse could mean solitude or something worse. A crack of lightning illuminated the room, casting his shadow long and dark across the floor. In that moment, Selene felt a pull, a tug at the deepest corners of her heart, whispering that perhaps this stranger was not a threat but a key. "Why now?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Because time waits for no one," he said. "And the darkness, it is patient, but it will not be denied. Choose, and choose wisely." Selene's gaze drifted to the storm raging outside, to the twisted forest beyond the manor walls. She thought of the years she had spent alone, of the nights filled with silence, of the loneliness that had become her companion. And then, for the first time in years, she imagined a different path, one that led into shadows but not without light. She started again, but Varric's presence seemed to hold her in place, not with force, but with a silent promise that she could not fully understand. The wind rattled the windows, and the rain beat against the roof in relentless rhythm. Selene's heart pounded in her chest as the manor seemed to listen, as if the house itself waited for her decision. And then, without another word, Varric stepped back slightly, giving her space, yet leaving the promise of his presence like a shadow she could not escape. "I will wait," he said, his voice low and certain. "But remember, some doors once opened cannot be closed, and some destinies once faced cannot be denied." Selene closed her eyes, struggling to catch her breath. Her hand hovered over the door latch, the choice weighing heavier than any storm outside. Could she trust him? Could she step into a world she did not understand? Could she risk the unknown for a chance to break the chains that had bound her family for generations? She opened her eyes. The storm continued its violent symphony. The shadows in the corners of the room seemed to lean closer, listening. And from somewhere deep in her soul, a voice whispered, a voice she had long buried beneath grief and fear, that maybe, just maybe, stepping into the darkness could bring light. Selene's fingers tightened on the door. A decision had to be made. The night stretched before her, vast and uncertain, and the man in the shadows waited patiently, a promise of power, protection, and something more, something she could not yet name. The storm raged on, but within the manor, a quiet tension hung like a living thing. Seleni's heartbeat echoed in her ears. And then, with a deep, shuddering breath, she turned toward him, knowing that the choice she made in the next moment would change everything. The shadows whispered around her. The rain tapped on the roof like distant drums, and Varric's eyes, silver in the dim light, watched her, patient, eternal, and waiting. And Selene knew, as the storm howled outside, that her life, her bloodline, and her destiny would never be the same again. Selene's hands shook as she followed Varric through the storm-soaked forest. The night seemed alive, the trees bending in the wind as if bowing to the presence of the vampire lord. Every shadow seemed to whisper, every rustle of leaves sounded like voices calling her name. She gripped the folds of her cloak tightly, wishing the wind could shield her from the fear that churned in her stomach. Varric walked ahead with effortless grace. Even in the darkness, his eyes glimmered faintly, silver like moonlight on still water. There was no hurry in his steps, no unnecessary movement. Every motion he made seemed deliberate, precise, as if he had walked this path 1,000 times before. Selene wondered if he ever felt the cold, or if centuries had made him immune. "Where are we going?" she asked, her voice barely audible above the wind. "To my home," Varric said simply, his voice calm and steady yet carrying weight. "You will be safe there, though the place is not what you expect. It is a world apart from this one. A world of shadows, of secrets, and of power." Selene swallowed. She had lived her entire life at the edge of the forest, always feeling watched, always feeling as if something lingered beyond the trees. Yet nothing she had ever known compared to the presence she felt behind Varric. It was as if the forest itself parted for him, acknowledging him as its master. The path they followed twisted and turned, leading them to a stone bridge spanning a chasm shrouded in mist. Below, the wind howled like a restless spirit, and the water far beneath reflected the lightning that split the sky. Varric stopped at the edge and turned to her. "This is the crossing," he said. "Once we pass, you will leave the world you know behind. There is no turning back." Selene's stomach churned. She wanted to retreat, to run back to the warmth and safety of her manor, but part of her, the part that had waited in silence for so long, was curious. She wanted to see what lay beyond the boundaries of fear. I do not know if I can," she whispered. "You can," Varric said firmly, yet without harshness. "Fear is natural. Courage is not the absence of fear, but the decision to move forward despite it." Selene hesitated, then took a deep breath and stepped onto the bridge. The stones were slick with rain, but her resolve was stronger than her fear. Varric followed, his steps silent, steady. As they reached the other side, the mist parted to reveal a castle rising from the cliffside like a dark sentinel. Its towers pierced the storm clouds, and its windows glowed faintly with light, as if the building itself breathed. Selene's breath caught. She had read of castles in old books, but none had ever appeared so alive, so full of presence as this one. The walls were carved with intricate symbols, and statues of long-forgotten figures lined the courtyard, their eyes seeming to follow her with silent scrutiny. "This is," she began, but words failed her. "My home," Varric said. "And soon it will be yours if you choose to step fully into the path that awaits." The doors of the castle opened before them, as if by unseen hands. Inside, the air was warm, scented with old wood and candle wax, and yet it carried a weight, a presence that Selene could feel pressing against her heart. Shadows clung to the corners, moving as if alive, and the flickering light of chandeliers created patterns that seemed to whisper secrets. Varric led her through vast halls, past tapestries depicting battles and rituals long forgotten. The walls were lined with shelves filled with books, scrolls, and relics of power. Selene could feel the history in every stone, the lives of countless beings etched into the castle itself. "You have brought me here," she said softly, "but I do not understand why. Why me?" "Because your bloodline carries a curse," Varric said, his voice echoing in the hall. "A curse that has shadowed your family for generations. It was meant to be broken only when the right person with the right heart could face it. Selene frowned. A curse? What kind of curse? A curse born of grief, fear, and doubt, he explained. It binds your family to sorrow, prevents your bloodline from thriving. Only through courage, trust, and the strength to embrace both darkness and light can it be undone. And that person is you. Selene's chest tightened. She had always felt the weight of something over her family, though she had never understood its origin. The strange illnesses, the misfortune, the whispers of villagers, they were all pieces of a puzzle she had never solved. And now, centuries of shadow seemed to press down on her shoulders, waiting for her to act. She began, then faltered. And what do you want from me? Varric's eyes softened, just slightly, as if the centuries of power he carried could melt for a brief moment. I want to help you, he said. I want to guide you, protect you, and see this curse lifted. But you must choose to trust me. They walked further into the castle until they reached a room filled with mirrors of all shapes and sizes. The reflections shimmered strangely, as if the glass captured more than just the present moment. Selene caught glimpses of herself, of Varric, and of shadows moving behind them. This room, Varric said, is where the past, present, and future converge. Your ancestors speak here. Listen carefully and they may reveal what you need to know. Selene approached one of the larger mirrors. As she stared into it, the reflection shifted. She saw a young woman, pale and frightened, clutching a small child. The eyes were hers, or at least they were her blood centuries ago. The voice that echoed in the mirror was faint, whispering warnings of choices made and mistakes repeated. They are speaking to me?" Selene asked, her voice shaking. "Yes," Varric said. "They have always waited for someone with courage enough to hear them. The bloodline carries both shadow and light. To break the curse, you must accept both." Selene's mind raced. The prophecy, the whispers, the shadows, they all pointed to something she had never imagined. She was not just a widow, a lonely woman living on the edge of the forest. She was something more. She was part of a story that stretched across centuries, a story that demanded bravery, trust, and sacrifice. "And the sons?" she asked, finally daring. You said you could give me sons." Varric nodded. "Heirs who will carry your strength and mine. They will be the bridge between the human and the supernatural, between light and shadow. But this can only happen if you choose to walk this path willingly, not out of fear but out of understanding." Selene's heart ached. The idea of children, of heirs, of carrying on her bloodline, it seemed impossible after all she had lost. And yet a small spark of hope kindled within her chest. Perhaps this was what she had been waiting for all along, a chance to reclaim her family, her life, and her legacy. Can I see them?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Varric moved closer to the mirrors and touched one, his fingers brushing the glass. The reflection shimmered, showing fleeting images of boys, young and strong, laughing and running through shadows and light. Their eyes held hers and she felt a strange pull as if their souls were calling to her across time. Selene's hands trembled. They are real." "Yes," Varric said. "They are what could be if the path is chosen, but every choice carries risk. Some forces in this world will seek to prevent this, for power is never shared willingly." A chill ran down Selene's spine. She thought of the villagers, of whispers, of the danger that had always surrounded her. Could she trust Varric completely? Could she embrace the path he offered, knowing the consequences might be greater than she could bear? She turned to him, her voice firm despite the fear in her eyes. "I need time. I need to understand everything." Varric studied her for a long moment. Then he stepped back, his posture relaxed but commanding. "Time is a gift, but it is also fleeting. The shadows grow stronger while you hesitate. Listen to your heart, Selene, and the path will become clear. But remember, some doors, once opened, cannot be closed." Selene nodded, though her mind was a whirlwind of doubt, fear, and cautious hope. She wandered further into the castle, touching the cold stone walls, feeling the echoes of centuries. Each step brought her closer to the weight of her destiny, and yet each step also reminded her of her solitude. Finally, she found herself in a quiet chamber overlooking the storm-lashed forest. Lightning split the sky, illuminating the twisted branches like dark veins. She pressed her hands to the window, staring out, thinking of the life she had lived alone and the life that could be if she dared to trust Varric. A soft voice broke her thoughts. "The night is long," Varric said, stepping beside her. "But even in darkness there is light. You will find it if you choose to see it." Selene turned to him, her eyes searching. For the first time she felt a flicker of connection, a thread of understanding between them. The loneliness that had weighed on her heart for years seemed to ease, just slightly, in his presence. The storm outside began to fade, but the tension in her chest remained. The castle held many secrets, many shadows, and many truths yet to be revealed. Selene knew that the journey ahead would be dangerous, that choices she made could change her life, and the lives of her descendants forever. And yet, something deep inside her stirred. Perhaps she was ready. Perhaps she could face the shadows, embrace the unknown, and claim a future she had never imagined. The castle was quiet, but it was not peaceful. Shadows clung to the corners, shifting as if alive, and the flickering candlelight seemed to follow Selene wherever she moved. She had spent the day wandering through vast halls, listening to the whispers of mirrors and the echoes of history. Every step she took reminded her that this world was not like hers. A place where power breathed in every stone and silence was heavy with secrets. Varric walked beside her, silent, patient, and always observant. Selene could feel his gaze on her, not demanding but steady, as if he was trying to read the thoughts that raced through her mind. She had begun to trust him slowly, despite her fear. He had not forced her to do anything. He had guided her, shown her glimpses of her destiny, and allowed her to see the possibilities that stretched before her. Yet, trust was a fragile thing, and she felt the weight of the unknown pressing on her. "We will meet the council tonight," Varric said, breaking the silence. His voice was calm, but there was a seriousness that made her stomach tighten. "The elders of the night will wish to speak with you. They will test you, Selene. They will try to sway your choice." "The elders?" Selene asked, her voice trembling slightly. "Why must I face them? I thought only you and I were involved in this." Varric's silver eyes met hers. "The elders guard the balance of our world. They do not like surprises. They will judge whether you are worthy of the path you are about to walk, and some of them, they may wish to use you for their own ambitions." Selene's chest tightened. The thought of betrayal made her shiver. She had already felt the weight of responsibility, the pull of destiny, but now the threat of manipulation added another layer of danger. Could she trust anyone here? Could she even trust Varric completely? As they walked through the hallways, Selene noticed the intricate carvings on the walls. Figures of humans and creatures, shadows and light intertwined, depicted battles and ceremonies she could not fully understand. Varric stopped before a large door, its surface carved with a swirling pattern that seemed to move in the candlelight. "This is where you will meet them," he said softly. "The choice you make tonight will shape everything to come. Remember, Selene, courage is not the absence of fear but the will to face it." Selene nodded, her hands clenched at her sides. She stepped forward, pushing the door open. The chamber beyond was vast, filled with figures seated on elevated platforms. Their eyes glimmered in the dim light, reflecting centuries of wisdom and power. Selene felt their gaze upon her, heavy and piercing. The elders of the night were real, and their presence was more intimidating than she had imagined. One of them, a tall figure draped in deep crimson, leaned forward. "So, this is the one Varric has brought," the elder said. The voice was smooth, cold, and measured. "The human who claims the bloodline of shadows. Do you understand what you have walked into, child?" Selene swallowed hard. I wish to understand," she said. "I want to know what is expected of me." The elder's gaze hardened. Many have come before you believing they were ready. Few were. They failed. Your courage will be tested. Your choices will be weighed. And some will wish to sway you with promises you do not yet understand. Another elder, cloaked in midnight blue, spoke next. The prophecy names you, but prophecies can be twisted. Power does not forgive weakness. The sons you hope to bear, they are not merely heirs. They carry the potential to unite or destroy. Do not underestimate the forces aligned against you. Seleni's heart pounded. The room seemed to close around her, the candlelight flickering as if anxious to see what would happen next. She felt the weight of centuries pressing down on her, the eyes of ancestors and strangers alike watching her every move. Varric stepped forward. "They speak truth," he said, his voice steady. "But fear alone does not define your path. You have a choice. You may walk away and return to your life of solitude, or you may step fully into the destiny that calls you." Seleni's mind raced. She thought of her lonely years, of the loss and grief she had carried. She thought of the small spark of hope that Varric had ignited in her heart. She thought of the mirrors, the whispers of her ancestors, and the image of her sons, bathed in shadows and light. But doubts gnawed at her. Could she bear the weight of this destiny? Could she face the elders' judgment and the dangers that surely awaited? Could she trust Varric completely when even his intentions were cloaked in centuries of mystery? Before she could answer, a sudden movement caught her eye. One of the elders, a figure draped in black, rose from their seat. Their presence was different, dark and sharp, as if shadows themselves had taken form. "You think she is ready," the figure said, voice like silk over steel. "But the bloodline of shadows is not to be toyed with. She will fail, and when she does, all shall pay the price." Selene felt a shiver run down her spine. The words were not just a warning, they were a threat. She glanced at Varric, whose eyes met hers with a steady, calm intensity. He did not flinch, did not move to intervene. Instead, he gave her the smallest nod, a silent reassurance that he believed in her. "You have your choice," he whispered just for her. "Trust yourself." The elders continued to speak, presenting visions of danger and consequence. Selene saw shadows that threatened to consume her, storms that could tear her family apart, and forces that would stop at nothing to control her bloodline. Yet alongside the darkness, she glimpsed faint glimmers of light, moments of joy, protection, and the warmth of connection that Varric had shown her. Selene realized then that the path was not simple. It was not a matter of obedience or submission. It was a matter of courage, wisdom, and heart. She had to decide not only what she wanted for herself, but what she wanted for the future she could create. The elders leaned closer, their eyes narrowing. "Decide, child. Do you claim the path of shadows and light, or do you retreat into nothingness? The choice will not wait forever." Selene took a deep breath. Her hands trembled, but her voice was firm. I will not retreat. I will face this path no matter the danger." The chamber fell silent. The elders studied her, their expressions unreadable. Then slowly the figure in black lowered their head. "So be it," the elder said. "The path is yours, but remember, shadows can deceive and light can blind. Guard your heart or all will be lost." Varric stepped forward and placed a hand near hers, though not touching. "You have made the first choice," he said. "The rest will follow, but now you must learn what it truly means to embrace the destiny of your bloodline." Selene's gaze fell to the floor, then rose to meet the elders. She felt the weight of centuries, the pull of shadows and light intertwined, and the presence of the sons she had glimpsed in the mirrors. For the first time, she understood that this was not about fear or desire alone. It was about responsibility, courage, and the strength to stand when all else seemed lost. As they escorted her from the chamber, Selene felt a strange combination of fear and exhilaration. She had faced the elders and made her choice, but the path ahead was uncertain. Every step she took deeper into the castle brought new questions. How would she learn to protect the sons she might bear? How would she face the dangers that the elders had warned of? Could she truly trust Varric, even as her heart began to open to him in ways she did not fully understand? Night deepened, and the storm outside had faded, leaving a silver mist that clung to the castle towers. Selene walked beside Varric through quiet halls, each echo of their footsteps a reminder that the world beyond the walls waited, both in shadow and light. Finally, they arrived at a small balcony overlooking the forest. The trees swayed gently in the moonlight, their branches casting delicate shadows across the mist. Selene leaned on the railing, her heart pounding. "Do you regret your choice?" Varric asked softly, his voice almost blending with the whispering wind. Selene shook her head, though uncertainty lingered. "I do not know if I regret it yet," she said, "but I am scared. I do not know what I am stepping into." "Fear is natural," Varric said, "but it will not control you. You have taken the first step. That is what matters. You will learn, you will grow, and the shadows will no longer hold power over you unless you allow them." Selene looked out over the forest, feeling the weight of destiny pressing on her shoulders. She had made her choice, but the journey was only beginning. The castle was filled with secrets. The elders watched closely, and the forces that sought to challenge her would not rest. And yet, for the first time in years, she felt a faint warmth in her chest, a flicker of hope, courage, and something else, something she did not fully understand. Varric's presence was steady beside her, not controlling, not demanding, but patient. It was a reminder that even in a world of shadows and danger, trust and connection could exist. Selene drew a deep breath. She would face what was to come, she told herself. She would embrace the path, whatever it demanded, and she would not let fear or doubt control her. But even as she resolved this, a distant shadow moved among the towers, watching, waiting, and unseen. Not all eyes welcomed her choice. Not all forces would allow the bloodline of shadows to rise unchallenged. Cliffhanger ending. The shadow whispered across the stone like silk over steel. And somewhere deep in the castle, the forces of betrayal were already moving. The first rays of dawn barely touched the castle towers, spilling silver light across the stone walls. The forest below was calm, a blanket of mist curling between the trees, but inside the castle, the air was thick with anticipation. Selene stood in the grand hall, her hands trembling slightly as she faced the elders once more. Their gazes were heavy, ancient, and unyielding, but she no longer felt the fear that had gripped her during her first encounter. She had made her choice, embraced her path, and now she would see it through. Varric stood beside her, silent and composed. His presence was reassuring, yet not overpowering. Selene felt his steady gaze, and in it, she found a calm she had never known in her lonely life. He had been her guide, her protector, and her anchor through the storm of destiny. But this was her trial, and she knew the next moments would test every ounce of courage she possessed. "You have come far," one of the elders said, voice like the rustle of dry leaves. "But far is not enough. The shadows still linger. The darkness in your bloodline waits to claim more than you can imagine. Are you ready to face it fully?" Selene took a deep breath. "I am," she said. "I will face whatever comes. I will not let fear control me. I will embrace the path set before me." The elders exchanged glances, silent communication flowing between them like wind over water. Then, one by one, they stepped forward, forming a circle around her. The tallest of them, cloaked in midnight blue, raised a hand. The air seemed to vibrate with ancient energy, and shadows rose from the floor like dark smoke, swirling around Selene. "Then let the trial begin," the elder intoned. Selene's heart pounded, but she held her ground. The shadows coiled around her, whispering doubts and fears, showing visions of failure and loss. She saw her sons, tiny, fragile beings, falling into darkness, her family line destroyed, and the world consumed by shadows. The visions threatened to overwhelm her, to make her retreat into the safety of solitude. But then she felt Varric's hand near hers, though he did not touch her. His presence was a silent promise, a reminder that she was not alone. The fear did not vanish, but it became manageable. She took a deep breath, centering herself, and remembered the lessons he had quietly taught her. Courage is not the absence of fear, but the decision to act despite it. "I will not be controlled by fear," Selene whispered. "I will not let the shadows define me." The shadows recoiled slightly at her words, and the elders nodded in approval. The room brightened as if her courage had pushed back the darkness. But the trial was not over. From the deepest corners of the hall, a darker presence emerged, one of the elders who had previously threatened her in silence, their eyes sharp with ambition. "You may claim courage," the shadowed elder said, voice like ice, "but the world does not bend to courage alone. You must choose. Will you protect your bloodline even if it demands sacrifice? Or will you turn from destiny, leaving your line to crumble?" Selene's chest tightened. The weight of choice pressed on her, heavier than any storm she had ever faced. She thought of the life she had lived alone, of the grief that had shadowed her heart, and of the sons she might bear, the heirs of both her strength and Varric's power. This was more than fear. This was responsibility, a test of her heart, her will, and her courage. "I will protect them," she said firmly, "no matter the cost. I will not turn away from what is right, even if it is difficult, even if it is dangerous." The shadowed elder paused, then lowered their gaze. "So be it. Let the path you have chosen guide you. But know this, power does not forgive weakness. You must remain vigilant, for the forces that opposed you do not rest." Varric stepped forward, finally placing a hand on her shoulder. It was a gesture of solidarity, not dominance, and Selene felt a warmth she had not expected. "You have done well," he said softly. "The trial is not just of the body or mind, it is of the heart. You have shown both courage and wisdom." Selene exhaled, feeling the tension slowly ease. The shadows around her retreated, dissolving into the air, leaving the hall brighter than before. The elders stepped back, their judgment passed. Some nodded in approval, others remained stoic, but none opposed her. She had faced the trial and claimed her place in the path of destiny, but the moment of calm was short-lived. From the balcony above, a dark figure watched, unseen by the elders. Betrayal had not been defeated entirely. Some still wished to interfere, to seize power from the bloodline of shadows and prevent the prophecy from unfolding. Selene could feel the stirring of danger in the air, subtle but insistent. She knew the trials were not over, but she also knew she was no longer alone. That night in the quiet of the castle, Varric led Selene to a chamber filled with light and warmth, far from the cold halls and shadows of politics. There, in the glow of candlelight, he spoke of the next step, the creation of her heirs. "You are ready," he said, voice low and certain. "The sons you will bear will carry the strength of both our lines. They will be protected, but the process will demand patience, trust, and courage. You must give yourself to this, not out of fear, but out of understanding." Selene nodded. She had faced the elders, survived the trial, and accepted the responsibility that came with her bloodline. Now, she had to take the final step, the act that would bring the prophecy into motion. She did not fear the act itself. She feared only failing those she sought to protect. The ritual began at midnight. Candles formed a circle around Selene, their flames flickering like stars caught in glass. Varric chanted softly, the words ancient and melodic, resonating with the very stones of the castle. Shadows swirled, but they no longer threatened her. They moved in harmony, controlled by her courage and his guidance. Selene closed her eyes, focusing on the vision of her sons she had seen in the mirrors. She felt their presence, small but strong, calling to her, urging her to embrace the path. She let the warmth of hope fill her chest, pushing aside fear. The ritual continued, building in intensity, and she could feel the energy of the castle itself converging around her, as if the walls, the stones, and the very air acknowledged her courage. Hours seemed to pass like moments. Finally, the energy subsided, leaving a calm, radiant glow in the chamber. Selene opened her eyes and saw two small figures, surrounded by a shimmering aura of light and shadow. They were perfect and small, yet full of the power and promise that their bloodline carried. "They are here," Varric whispered, kneeling beside her. His silver eyes shone with a rare softness, centuries of loneliness softened by the presence of hope and legacy. "Your sons, our legacy." Selene looked down at them, feeling a joy she had not known in years. Her heart swelled with love, pride, and relief. She had embraced her path, faced her fears, and claimed her destiny. And yet, even in this moment of triumph, she knew vigilance would always be necessary. Forces beyond the castle still watched, and betrayal still lingered in the shadows. Days passed, and the castle adjusted to the new balance. The elders acknowledged her courage and wisdom, offering guidance rather than judgment. Varric remained by her side, patient and watchful, teaching her not just the ways of power but the ways of protection and leadership. Selene grew stronger, more confident, and more connected to both the shadows and the light that shaped her bloodline. The forest, once dark and menacing, seemed to breathe with new life. Shadows no longer moved to threaten but to protect. The castle itself, long a sentinel of secrets, became a home filled with light, laughter, and the soft cries of her sons. Selene held her children in her arms, feeling their warmth and strength. She thought of the path she had walked, the choices, the trials, the fear, and the courage. She thought of Varric, whose presence had guided her without ever controlling her. And she knew that she had been transformed. No longer was she a widow living in isolation. She was the mother of shadows, a protector, a leader, and a force of hope and balance in a world that had long teetered between darkness and light. One evening, as the sun set behind the forest, casting golden light across the towers, Selene stood on the balcony, watching her sons play among the shadows that shimmered like silver threads. Varric joined her, placing a hand gently on her shoulder. "This is only the beginning," he said softly. "The world will watch our line rise. There will be challenges, dangers, and trials still to face, but together we are stronger than anything that threatens us." Selene nodded, her heart full. "We will face it all," she said. "And we will protect what we have built." The mist swirled around the towers, but it no longer carried menace. It carried promise. The prophecy had begun, the curse had been broken, and a new legacy was born, one of courage, love, and the balance of shadow and light. And somewhere in the forest beyond, unseen eyes watched, silent but no longer threatening. The world was changing, shaped by the choices of one brave woman and the vampire lord who had chosen to walk beside her. Selene turned back to Varric, a faint smile playing on her lips. The journey had been long, the path fraught with danger, but the future, her future, was finally hers to embrace.